Call the meeting to order. This is the Marion City Council work session for June 20th, 2017. And I see the first one up is Finance. Good afternoon.
I'm Rachel with the Finance Department. I'm here to speak just on number 5, the hotel motel recommendations. We received a total of 18 applications for funding totaling over $269,000. The committee reviewed all the applications and scored them based on project type, need, benefits, leveraging funds, prospects for success, and then uniqueness. We met last week.
I can barely hear you.
We met last week, and the committee put together a recommended allocations totaling $169,000. And you guys in your packet should have that listing of the applications we received and then what's recommended.
Yeah. Any questions on what was in the packet then?
So there's going to be, Lon, there's going to be more collected than the 158, correct? Budgeted amount.
Yeah, in a typical year, we usually do a little bit better than that. I think for the current fiscal year, I think we had budgeted the program lower, and last time I saw, I think we were expecting to receive around 181.
Okay.
Yeah. We're actually, we budgeted 180 to receive, and we received 188,000, so we did receive more funds than what we were predicting.
Any questions from this side? All right, thank you. Number 6.
Yeah, Your Honor, number 6, 7, and 8 are all related. Actually, number 7's a repeat of number 8, so you could almost cross number 7 out. But 6 and 8, is there a general obligation bond issuings? 6 is the new money, and number 8 is a refunding of a 2009 bond series. The size of the new money has been broken into 2 years just due to the dollar size. It got to be a little bit too large. So our financial consultants recommended we break that into 2 years in bond counsel. And then, like I said, the refinancing, we're expected to gain around $240,000 last I heard as far as savings on our interest. The one thing I will point out, the resolutions as printed, due date July 13th is our hearing date. That is incorrect. It should read July 20th on both of those. We aren't going to be meeting on the 13th, so we should probably move it to a council date. Any questions on those at all? This is just to set the public hearings. There'll be more forthwith to come in the future.
Oh, is the interest rate still low on these? Or
I haven't heard, Lon, of you lately as far as any new issuings. It's 2% maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think they've been averaging around 2% or a little bit under based on a couple of recent issuances. That's one of the reasons why on the refunding, why we're projecting to have some pretty significant savings.
I know the feds have been rattling their saber about raising the federal rate. Will that, if they do, would that make these jump up? Or
it would have an impact on us, but usually it seems like there's a little bit of a delay between when they do that and then when we issue it. Marion, because of our credit rating and the size of the issuance, they're very competitive. We, for a lot of our bigger issues, we'll get 6 or 7 bidders, so they have to be pretty aggressive.
Okay. All right. Any other questions then on for Wes?
Lon, do we have a time limit before we let one lapse, I hope, and so we know that the interest rate is lower on the new one than the old one?
That's something that our bonding agent keeps a real close eye on for us, and one of the reasons that she suggested that we split these two into 2 issuances is that she didn't think that there was going to be a lot of interest rate pressure that we needed to worry about, but we'd always have the option of starting proceedings for the second half earlier if it looked like there was going to be an interest rate jump, and we'd be better off to proceed before calendar 2018 with the second half of the issuance.
Because the prime has gone up 3 or 4 times lately, 3-4 months, and
yeah.
We probably aren't going to get any of that 1.6 money anymore, or whatever it was we got last time.
Yeah, I'd be happy with 1.8.
Yeah, well, 1.8. Well, the prime going up would be terrific, you know. I don't know what we're expiring, 2 or 3 probably %.
I'd have to look. I'm not sure. They're the later years of the 2009 issuance that we did, but I don't remember offhand what those were at.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Wes. Number,
I was going to say, we can go on to number 9, and I get 2 more that are starred. Number 9 is just a transfer of our unused unemployment funding for all the general fund and the different funds. Normally, at the end of the year, we've done this the last several years, we'll transfer that unexpended balance over to the employee benefits fund to kind of help build that fund up. That's where we pay cash outs and the 27th payroll that hits every 7 years. And so it just transfers. It's going to be a little over $43,000 that we'd be transferring over this year.
or just for number 9, or for 9 and 10?
No, that's just for number 9. Number 10, in a previous council meeting, we had approved, you had approved an agreement with Medco and Restoration Dental on a development agreement, a TIF project. That development agreement calls for the city, to start repaying Medco in the fall of 2019. And the project obviously is pretty well done. They've moved in, they're started operations. This resolution would just give me authorization to start making that payment sooner than 2019. Start paying Medco back. That would then save us some interest rate in the meantime.
So we've already been collecting for that, or have that in an account somewhere then that we can start doing that early?
Well, we're going to do an internal loan. That was approved at the last council meeting. We're going to be doing an internal loan, and that will be the source of funds to start paying Medco back. It'll be a 2-year loan.
Out of the internal loan?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions then for Wes? I don't believe so. Thank you very much. Okay, public service.
Okay, 1 and 2, kind of the same topic. Number 1, that's setting the public hearing for this Thursday on the Verizon wireless lease payments. Council was briefed with this at the last work session. This is similar to the project that was completed in 2016. Verizon has identified 7 locations throughout the city in which they would like to put the small cell wireless infrastructures in those locations. Under the terms of the agreement, they would lease or co-locate the wireless structures on city-owned poles. They would pay for the poles, pay for the improvements, and then in addition, an annual rent of $2,000. So we'll have the public hearing. The 7 locations all have their supplemental lease agreements. They're included in the council packets. So, any questions on that?
You have
I did when I was reading it, but now I got to think of what it was. It had to do with the amount. What was was it 500 per pole? No.
No. With electrical and rent for 5 years, it's $2,000 annually.
Okay, that was my question. Was it
Yep.
that per pole, or was that
Pole.
total? Okay,
No,
so
that's per
2,000
pole.
per pole. Okay.
Yeah, per pole. And then after 5 years, we'll renegotiate that lease. The reason being is that they'll pay for the improvements. Each one of these poles is somewhat expensive. They'll pay for all the install, donate as a public improvement, and then after 5 years, we kind of take the value of that and then renegotiate the lease.
And then out of curiosity, the lease payments, where does that go?
Right now, it's
do with that.
it's expended to the city's communication fund. Within that fund, that pays for the city's fiber optics, communications infrastructure, switches, things like that. And so also projects like this. And so anytime we have an opportunity, let's say, to expand our fiber network or anything like that, that's the fund we utilize that for.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Are these actually online and running now?
No. Upon approval, we'll go ahead and move forward to working with them to get them installed.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Right, wasn't, one time, wasn't Verizon paying other cities more money per pole our
In larger
city?
cities, they are. I want to say in the state of Iowa, and I don't quote me, we might be the first city to have a direct lease payment from them. You know, offhand?
First city,
Yeah. So, in other cities, yeah, they do have higher lease agreements. But as we discussed back in 2015, I think is when we agreed to this, we'll pay for the public improvements, and after 5 years, we'll visit that again.
Oh,
that
okay.
lease payment.
Physical weight, not gonna hurt the poles any.
No, the poles are designed, they'll be brand-new poles. They are designed specifically for this application. So Verizon works with a Valmont Structures. They design these poles specifically for this project.
'Cause it looks like there's something bigger on one side.
Yeah, the antennas are a little bit bigger, but that'll be for each location. That'll be different. Yep,
Thank you.
All right. Is that all for you?
that's all.
Wow, you got off light tonight.
Short one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chief.
I got a quick question for the chiefs before you get into what you're getting into.
No, just pay the ticket, forget about
Ah, rats. That was for both chiefs. Quick update about fireworks and like calls or.
As of May 1st, according to the police department data, May 1st to current date, we've had 42 calls for service related to fireworks. To my knowledge, we have not had a major incident or anything that required excessive police attention, and we have issued no citations to date.
And as for the fire department, we've had no injuries, but we've had 2 fires. No major fires of residences or anything like that. We had a dumpster fire, and then children firing off firecrackers in piles of leaves to start the leaves on fire, and that's been about it. We've taken only 4 phone calls with complaints. Most of what we see is on a social basis. You know, people who know me, they'll comment, but that's been most of it. One comment on Twitter, the city Twitter account, a couple comments on Facebook, the city Facebook account, but that's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I also have a request for some roundabout updated data on crash data. I'll have that to you probably by tomorrow for
Excellent.
you to have. Okay. Item number 1 is a request to approve payment to Keesler's Police Supply. We're going to purchase 50 Glock 17 handguns for the police department. We'd like to obtain those in early July in the new fiscal year. On August 8th and 9th, every officer in the Marion Police Department will transition to this handgun. In my opinion, it's probably the best handgun in the world to use for law enforcement. It'll standardize our training and allow us to be consistent in what we're carrying, because right now we're all over the place. The officers are all in support of it, and we're actually excited about the transition. Okay.
Is there any, will there require any training for the officers for how to handle the new ones? 'Cause they're
Absolutely.
different.
They'll go through a full 8 hours of training on the weapon, on the particulars of the trigger pull, and the particulars of the weapon, how to shoot it, the safety components of the weapon, the pros and cons. There are some things about the weapon, if you're not knowledgeable about it, it's real easy to have an accidental discharge that could hurt you if you're not knowledgeable how to function the weapon. So they will receive a full 8 hours of training before they allowed to carry it on duty.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. The second resolution is, I talked to you about this in February. I'm working with the city manager and the University of Iowa to identify funds from the police department to partner with the University of Iowa to be our research partner at the Marion Police Department. The University of Iowa's Public Policy Center is ready to and willing to engage with us on numerous projects that I can brief you on at a later date. But the initial cost estimate of that partnership with the University of Iowa is right at $50,000. The indirect cost to the university in this initial cost is going to be about $4,600. If we did not have a policy in place in Marion for indirect, the university would charge us 52.5%. So that's a difference of about $26,000 on a $46,000 agreement. So by us having this or creating this policy and having it in place, it's going to save us a lot of money. And what it'll do is it'll allow the majority of our funds to go to the research partnership, and unfortunately not the Iowa football team, to be frank. So that's item number 2. Any questions on that? I'm actually really, really excited about that. We'll be the first law enforcement agency in the state of Iowa, hopefully, to partner with the University of Iowa. The Public Policy Center has a brand-new criminal justice program. It's actually the fastest-growing curriculum at the University of Iowa, and we're going to be the department, hopefully, that they partner with. We're real excited about that.
Is there a standard that a lot of agencies, different cities set for indirect cost rate at 10%? Is that kind of the going that people are due, or?
It's an acceptable norm that the universities are willing to take. The University of Missouri Kansas City took it, and we modeled it off a model policy out of San Francisco for the 10%. Universities are generally amicable to take whatever city allows, and if there's not the policy in place, they will take their standard rate, which at the University of Iowa, again, is 52.5%. So.
Okay.
A couple of other updates real quick. As everybody may be or may not be aware, the President of the United States will be in town tomorrow. We have a significant ops plan that is in place. Marion Police Department has significant involvement at the two sites. If there are any questions or concerns, I'd be glad to answer them after this meeting due to the sensitive nature. But we are involved in security at both sites. Another thing that I probably need to bring you up to speed on is on Monday, next Monday, myself, Chief German from Cedar Rapids, and Sheriff Gardner will be holding a press conference with the media about the encryption of the primary radio channel in order to provide better safety and service to the citizens of Iowa. It's time that we encrypt that channel for many different reasons that if you feel the need, I can go to in great detail on sidebar. But it's way past due. The days of people following us around, listening to what we're doing, knowing our response times, knowing where we're going for distraction purposes, that's going to end on Monday. We may get a little blowback from the media because they can't send their trucks wherever we go. But I tell you what, it's going to be incumbent on me and my staff to make sure we do our diligence to keep the media informed and to make sure we're a good steward and partner with them. And I guarantee you, Marion Police Department will be. We'll get them notifications as quickly as we can to keep them informed so they can do their job. Because you know what, when you feed them what they need to have, they're going to leave you alone and be your best supporter. So I'll bring them in close. I'll take good care of them. I'll try to relay that to them on Monday, and the proof will be in the pudding on how I handle it from that point forward. So,
Chief, will this be the whole system, the county?
Yes, sir.
Cedar Rapids
It'll
and
be
Marion?
the whole go, everything.
Yeah, okay. Any questions on that?
Okay. Already touched fireworks, roundabouts. Councilwoman Etzel and I think some other council individuals had some concerns about a party that occurred at Cocktails over the weekend. To be frank, we committed a lot of resources with it, and it's not the type of event that I'll sign a hold harmless on again in the future. We are developing an after action to give you an assessment of what actually happened at Cocktails that night. And then we're going to have some proactive meetings with the Cocktails management so they know what to expect the next time they come with a hold harmless, that we're going to expect some certain things, security plan, what's the event specifically, a little more detail, and we'll give it an extra level of scrutiny so we don't get into the mess that we had the other night out there. Really, I think that's it. I would ask maybe at the next work session, if it's okay with everybody, I would like maybe 15 minutes to give everybody just an update. It's 6 months this week that I've been in command out there. I'm proud to be here. I love my job, love my new community, and I got a lot to share with you. A lot of good things happening out there. So if you want it, I'd love to give you 15 minutes if you think it's valuable because there's so much going on.
Chief, did I see where you were competing?
I didn't do too well, Joe. I'm a little rusty sitting over there in that chair. I'm not going to lie. But I gave it my best. We had a good showing up there. He's talking about a pistol competition for charity that we had some officers participate in, and I gave it my best, but
that's fine. I appreciate
the prize didn't go home with me.
I appreciate you showing the flag and going out to do that, though. That's
proud to be here.
Very commendable of you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Anything else? Thank y'all.
Excuse me, Your Honor. I'd like to make a quick clarification, just so you know. It's the law enforcement only that radios that are going to be encrypted.
That's what I was understanding.
Fire department won't be. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So So they can still follow you around.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, Parks. Mike Altan from vacation.
War wounds.
Just one item on the agenda this afternoon. I have been working with Mark Morgan with Foster's Heating and Cooling, trying to come up with a cooling solution for the historical McGowan House. Mark has spent a lot of hours over there trying to figure out what options are available for us with somewhat the least impact to that house and our current tenant in there. So in my packet, I gave you those options. There's more detail there. I broke it down into the three options with just some bullet points associated with there. Option number one is more your traditional duct type system. It's the least expensive of all the options that are before the council. Standard equipment with your typical duct type air conditioning cooling system. It is probably the most invasive just because of the duct work that would have to be put in, and probably has the most impact to the tenant during their operating hours. Option two, very similar to option one, with one exception, and that is that option two includes a mini split within the entrance area where the cooler is. If you come in the north entrance, that's where that would be cooled differently. Just to handle the cooler that's in there produces a lot of heat, so we thought that might be an option that we just cool that differently, that's controlled differently. The third option, and the most expensive, is a 100% mini split system. Probably the least invasive. Benefit would be that individual areas are controlled separately, so can regulate those a little bit better. With that said, options one and two both have a rebate. Option three does not. I did ask Mark to come here today. I am not the technical expert on this at all, so if the council has any questions, I'd have Mark come up and Mark can answer those for you. So there's the three. Mark has spent a lot of time on this at the McGowan House. He worked on the heating system over there and worked to put these proposals together. One thing I did mention in my memo also is that it would be my recommendation to the council that we would sole source this work to Foster's, that I would not go out and bid this based on the facts that, one, the time that Mark has already invested in putting these proposals together for us. Not that I could not go out and have some other company do it. Mark's knowledge of the home, also Mark's knowledge of historical homes, those type of things, led me in this direction. So that's something that I just wanted to bring forward, that is a recommendation that I have out there also. So with that, I don't know if council has some questions for Mark. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, just a question for, how much is in your budget for replacement? Or
I think overall budget, Lon, I think you had said around 50,000, but that includes some other work on the McGowan House, but I'll let Lon speak to the budget.
Yeah, we just had a general line item in the budget for next year for city building repairs. That was going to include the replacement of a door at the police department, some concrete work over at Fire Station 2, some improvements for City Hall for some offices, some work over at the McGowan House. We had informally figured that between 50 and 75,000 of that would be needed for the McGowan House. This was one of the projects, but there's also some preservation work that needs to be done on the windows. There's some fascia and soffit work that needs to be done. That'll come along later. So it's really just how far can the money take us on the needed improvements over there.
Having a building of a similar age, I'd be interested to know from Mark if we need current windows. I think it's got to be time to also think about, and he doesn't do that, but And the windows, I can tell you at 610 10th Street was 29,000. So, we're talking about more than just the heating, because maybe you're fighting a losing battle is what I'm asking, Mark. With it.
Well, we would win the battle. But to your comments about envelope improvements, absolutely. Having been involved with an awful lot of flood recovery work in the last 8 or 9 years now, I was involved with many historical buildings downtown Cedar Rapids that were very heavily damaged and that were improved dramatically post-flood by mountains of dollars that flowed in from all kinds of different funding streams, and windows was a big deal. And it's obviously a very big deal at the McGowan House as well. But to your question about the air conditioning system, one of the things that you might notice by looking at it, if you've got some technical background, there is a lot of air conditioning here because I had to work with what we have. And one of those things is, really old windows that I don't have a lot of confidence in as far as keeping the cooling inside and the heating the same way. Although the heating, I think, has been very successful after we took out the old boilers and put in one high-performance boiler in that. I think that's been really, really successful as far as that goes. So it may not be as bad as you think, Mr. Draper, but I won't compete for the dollars as far as that goes. If our as citizens decide that we should do envelope upgrades, whether it be windows or steel roof or insulation or whatever, ahead of doing the air conditioning, it's okay. I intend to be here. My friend Carl Foster, who hired me at Foster's Heating 44 years ago last month, is behind me now, and so I expect that I'll be a while yet to be able to put in to help with this program. But certainly would step aside. And also, there are opportunities in here that we could separate. I put scopes together that I thought made sense to me as I wrote in my narrative. We could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do bits and pieces of that. So if we have a tenant that we really, really, really want to make happy, that is, we collectively want to make very, very make happy, we can work with that too. We can take out bits and pieces. Scope 2 that includes the ductless mini split heat pump for the front room to overcome heat gain that Mike talked about with the big cooler, but that's also a very busy space, maybe more than the rest of the time. We may want to air condition that and not necessarily so much of it the rest of the time, just depending on their use. And of course, I also when I calculated the loads for this project, presumed that it would be something like it is now, not a residential place. I'm assuming that as long as we all own this, we're going to hope for some sort of commercial application use. Therefore, the air conditioning is pretty heavy duty because expectations on cooling commercial spaces are different than they are for
Mark, because I would lean towards option 3 in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
What is the specialized maintenance that it has? Is that something that's going to be expensive or?
Well, yes. In First Time Methodist Church, the old library, our old library, we put in 14 units like that, and we cut the light bill in half, which of course was a wonderful thing. However, because they run a lot and they're small, the wall hung fan coil units have to be cleaned annually, and it's not probably something that an inexperienced or untrained technician can do. A person that comes to your house or mine to work on our common air conditioner is typically, including at my company, a person who hasn't maybe worked there a long time. He's had some basic training, or she's had some basic training, understands what the components are and how they work, and can be cleaned pretty easily. The filter comes in and out very easily out of a slot. You can buy them at Menards or whatever. But the ductless mini split heat pumps, the things on the wall have to tuck in a device behind them and wash them out with a little battery-operated pressure washer. And we have to be very, very careful with it because I mentioned in there, everything's miniature, everything's solid state, and everything becomes obsolete like a VCR. And that's one thing that we've run into. The ductless mini splits that that I put in at the Presbyterian Church in 1986 have run just no problem. But they're kind of old school. Modern ones get updated and updated and updated, and that's a little bit as a citizen owner of all of this, a little bit kind of about that, because while their hard remote controls aren't included as part of this, they're hardwired thermostats. But my experience has been that if they've had a breakdown, especially a dramatic breakdown, if you get one that's 4, 5, or 6 years old, the manufacturer kind of looks at you and says, well, it's obsolete, buy a new one. And that's a little bit of a concern I have with that option, of course. I mean, I think I was fairly clear with that when I'm in my writing. It's like a little concerned with that.
Mark, the system you put into the Granger house, is that similar to 1 and 2?
The Granger house is a common, that's a number one. Yeah. And as you perhaps know, the upstairs doesn't do very well at the Granger house. But that was actually, when the Granger house was remodeled back in the late 70s, our company did not do the work there. I soldered together the weather vane cowl for Eldon Post that he put up on the roof of the carriage house. Was promptly stolen, but nevertheless, we did that. But was not designed by us, and I'm not sure that at the time they would have made the changes anyway, because of the dramatic amount of cutting and sawing, and that's the big concern I have with 1 and 2 up here. Is I like the ladies at Wade's very, very well, and they will hate us when we're in there working on that, because they have to move everything they've got to do that job, and it's going to be really tough. Ms. Hudson?
How long does it take to install it
On
on 1 and 2?
Sure, I understand. It'd probably be 2 weeks anyway, And that'll be one of those things, too, where I'd be very pleased to work with the owners and, of course, with you all as far as that scheduling goes, because if they would prefer for us to come for a few days and raise hell and then step aside for a few days to let them take a breath, or just, tear off the Band-Aid and go for it all at once, we can work with that, especially, as I recommended to Mr. Carolyn, that perhaps we can work with that later in the season, not when it's 200 degrees out and everything. Maybe we could do that in the winter, or it might be I don't know when flower season is. Presumably it's in February, big time, but maybe there's a lull in after the first of the year that we could, where their stock would contract a little bit. I don't really know that, but that's something I would certainly want to explore with the tenants.
But all 3 equally cool the same?
Their capacity is the same, yes. The big difference with number 3 is that almost every room has individual control. I'm not sure that's necessary, but gave an option for the different things.
So in option 1 and 2, the rebates are listed there. Is that net of the rebate, or rebates will come after that?
They come
after. So there's no rebate at all for option 3?
Mm-mm. I could look into that with Alliant, because we could maybe get a customized rebate with that, with the scope of this job. But I don't really know what to tell them just right now. I didn't go forward with that. I didn't call up the project manager and say we might do this, we might do that, because that they're.
Is the rebate tied to the efficiency or something?
Yes.
Okay, so option 3 is not as efficient.
It's very efficient, but as a ductless mini split system, they have different protocols for how they're installed. My memory is, and I have to admit that it's been now a month or so since I looked at it, that Alliant, who is the player here, as far as rebates go from the utility, I think that they ratcheted back the rebates on ductless mini split heat pump systems because they couldn't quantify the savings compared to what used to be there, because there's no loss for ductwork. All the air conditioning that's made by a ductless mini split unit is deposited in the space it's in. There's no transmission as far as ductwork goes. Static pressure loss compared in ductwork and coils and filters, things like that. So I believe they ratcheted back that. I think that was their reasoning, is that they couldn't quantify an upgrade. And the place didn't have air conditioning before. So it's kind of hard to, like at the old Carnegie Library when we had this giant big old chiller that was out there chugging away since 1965. It was pretty easy to quantify. We're still cooling the same space to the same temperature, and we're doing with half the juice.
Any other questions for Mark?
Yeah, long-term cost, least amount of cost, one,
You mean cost of operations?
and maintenance and
Oh,
things like that.
I'm going to really say that number one probably is going to be your least cost of operations as well, because as I mentioned in my narratives, and as Mr. Carolyn mentioned, it is standard stuff. Every licensed air conditioning mechanic in Marion could go take care of that equipment, could go fix it, they could diagnose it, and it wouldn't shock me at all if Mr. Carolyn doesn't have someone like that, they have it in public service, where somebody could actually perhaps take care of those systems alone. Filter changes are like that. You guys mostly, maybe some of you have actually gone out, hosed off your air conditioner yourselves. Pretty easy to take care of. The thermostats are plain Jane. It's an efficient system, if they're as efficient as we can make them in that type. But in the long term, we all have the these are they're bigger, well, not even that bigger, but they're residential style systems. We would expect that they'd last 20 years, okay, and be repairable in the medium. I can't promise you that on the ones that include the ductless mini split heat pumps, I think we'll get long-term results for them, and they'll be great. But I think that the cost for repairs 10 years down the road would kind of be, it's been my experience, that's been the case.
Mark, for the number 3, you said that there'd be individual systems. Well, that means you have to add on to the electrical to the house.
Well, interestingly, the outdoor part of the unit, which is this size,
right,
has multiple connections on it. So the electrical, yes, the house doesn't have air conditioning now, but the electric service that's there now, I believe, is going to be sufficient to run the air conditioners regardless of which ones we choose.
So you wouldn't have to expand the electrical box.
Air conditioning, the electrical panel was updated about the same time we put the boiler in, which was a couple years ago, and it was, we kind of had plans for this all along, so I don't expect a huge electrical stumble with that.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Mark? Okay, Mike.
Do I sit down now?
Thanks.
Oh, I forgot to bring my little yellow card up. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
So there are the options and Mark's suggestions for those 3 options. Is there one that the council prefers more over another, and just need a little direction from the council as to where we would go with this? Right now, we currently cool with 4 window air conditioners. So as far as efficiency goes, right now we don't have a lot over there. And with some of the wiring within the walls, the electrical there's plenty of supply there, as Mark said. But we're somewhat limited on what size BTU window unit we can put in the house without having some issues with overheating the wiring. So we're kind of at a point where we need to go some direction with the cooling over there. We owe that to the tenants of the property.
What about, yes.
Well, I'm leaning towards number 1, and I'm just hoping that they'll just be thankful to get central air, and they won't mind the disruption for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning towards number 1.
I definitely think that Mark and I could sit down with Ally and come up with some type of schedule that minimizes the impact to any of the options, and try to work around her peak periods, and I know Mark is willing to work with us on that.
This doesn't address the upstairs, right?
Yes, it does.
It does it will have units?
Yes.
Or,
Yep, this is the whole house.
yeah, okay. For historical,
That's a good question.
what's the feeling on, how much this will take away from the historical part of the house?
I don't believe it takes anything away from that. I was a little bit concerned with the mini splits and the wall, and I don't know, Mark, if you feel that same way, but that was the one that I thought the ductwork, for the most part, we're going to run that through chases and those type of areas, basement, and so I think that's minimal. I don't know, Mark, if you have any suggestions.
We're going to see registers and grills.
Right.
But if you go in the Heritage Center, the old Methodist Church, you go in there, we air conditioned that years ago, and you know that it's cool, but I don't really think you see the registers and grills on the floors and walls.
Well, then I think that's,
It's part of the background, and I also think that that's probably going to be, although it's the biggest amount of dust in Hill Columbia at the beginning, between now and it's going to be like going to Lincoln's home in Springfield. They're there, but you don't really notice.
Yeah, I would think the wall units would be
Yeah.
more noticeable and take away from the historical
They
value.
definitely will be.
Yeah.
We have any obligation to talk to the National Registry?
That I don't have the answer for
Ron,
that,
do we?
Paul. I'm not sure.
With the first two options, I don't believe so, because you're not talking about something that changes the exterior envelope. Generally, with the National Register, they're more concerned with how the building looks from the outside. Even when you go into the state or do the facade programs like we've done in the Uptown, they will look at the what they call the Section 106 review is the building envelope and the public presence of the building, less so than the interior.
I know they had to approve my windows, so.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we're splitting this out. This is a modernization of the building, and if you think about all the historic buildings around, there are courthouses. The White House was built without air conditioning. It certainly has it now. So many, many buildings have had pieces like that added as part of modernization. Same things with wiring, security alarm systems, and whatnot. But one of the options for the historic preservation part, which would be the windows, fascia, soffit, roofs, is we're taking a look at what actually Cedar Rapids did after the flood to make their buildings eligible for historic preservation tax credits, to see if that's something that we could emulate, because that'll make the local dollars go a lot further.
the more we talk about it, the more initially I was kind of thinking option 3. The more we talked about it, I think option 1, in my opinion, is probably the best way to go, and it's the least impactful on the look of the building, and that's where I would be. So
I'm leaning now, changing my mind.
So, and 2, we also will leave us some additional funds to tackle some additional projects at that facility. So.
Yeah, I agree. The windows are probably a big thing to tackle.
Now, that's our next hurdle, I think.
Yep.
Windows and doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, the windows, beyond just the lack of central air, are probably the biggest single obstacle to making the building energy efficient. They're all the old original single pane, and with the window units in there, that was one of my concerns. Just that vibration and moisture on those windows over time will break them down.
Yeah. Any other questions then for Mike?
Okay, so it sounds like option number 1 is the preferred choice. Would the council be comfortable if we put together a resolution for Thursday to approve that contract for Foster's Heating and Cooling for that option 1 installation? Get that?
Heads bobbing on both sides, so I think so.
Okay.
Yep, just for the option 1 resolution.
I just had one other thing too, Joe, that I wanted to bring forward to the council that wasn't on the agenda, And that's just that our city arborist, Mike Simprich, has been nominated by Trees Forever to receive the Outstanding Advocate Award this year. Actually, they have their awards banquet this week down in Iowa City, I believe. So that just is great for Mike in his new role to be recognized by Trees Forever for all his efforts associated with our tree initiatives and tree care within the community. So I just wanted to let the council be aware of that.
Tell him congratulations from the council.
Sure will.
I wanted to thank you and for working on this with Mark on the air conditioning and spending time to research this and get all the information to us. I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
And then there's Dan.
You ready?
Yep.
Actually, before I start on the agenda, I'd like to just discuss a little bit with the contract that council approved. I think it was the last meeting on the demolition of the buildings along the central corridor. With that process, we did an asbestos study testing. With that, as I mentioned, with the contract, we do have work outside of that contract with abode demolition for the abatement of that asbestos. We have now received that estimate and would like to approve an extra work order for that work on Thursday to get that work moving forward. It's about $14,000. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll add it to the agenda on Thursday.
Who is that to?
Active Thermal Concepts.
Who was?
Active Thermal Concepts.
Active Thermal, okay.
There's somebody that we've been working with, Tom works with a lot, so
Okay.
we're ready to move forward with that. So
Was that with,
Everyone good with that?
was that with just one building, or was that
no, that's 5 sites.
all of them? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. good
4
question.
sites, excuse me.
6 sites, Dan, on this map?
Yeah, one of those is not on this extra work order because we have not purchased it yet. The storage units are not on there yet.
So it's
We
from
will have it.
2 to 6 then?
Yeah, we will actually have more coming forward, I think. Is there any on that one?
Here.
On the storage units, do you know? We didn't do anything yet. Okay, separate.
Yeah, I think you're okay to bring it, Mark. Dan.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't
Thank you.
control this guy yet. These people-
Item number 6 under engineering is another project for this year. It's an annual program that we do with storm sewer drain tile work. This is our 2017 project. With that, we currently budget each year about $200,000. This includes work on 15th Street, Valley View Drive, Hillview Drive, South 15th Street, West 33rd Avenue, and 25th Avenue. Our preliminary estimate is a little over the $200,000, but we expect it to come in under budget when it is let. We will accept sealed bids on July 25th. We will expect work to start by August 28th and have 35 working days. Liquidated damages are $300 a day. So we are recommending moving forward with that project.
So this is to add to a storm sewer that is not there now?
Yeah, most of this is drain tile work, but some of it is intakes and that type of thing.
So will you be tearing up concrete to do any of this?
A little bit. Most of the work's behind the curb, though.
Okay,
Some driveways, though.
A lot of driveways, yes.
yeah.
It's our typical, you'll see it, we'll tear up about 2 to 3 feet behind the curb, we'll go down through, pull out sidewalks to go to the curb, and driveways, we'll remove a portion of the side of the driveways and put that in. We'll put the clean outs in and then move on down. So it'll go pretty quickly.
Okay. Questions on that? Number 7.
Number 7. Oh, number 7, I didn't realize that was on there. Basically, this is a change order for our sanitary sewer slip lining project. We have added 2 new locations on 3rd Avenue from 26th Street to 31st Street, and on 6th Avenue from 6th Street to 7th Street, and then north on to the alley. We currently budget about $300,000 for this annually for our sanitary sewer repairs. We did do a contract with municipal for $174,720.15. We also did a sanitary manhole project for $55,825. So we're looking to add this work to bring us closer to budget and get as much work done as possible for $41,855.20. So this would be additional sanitary sewer slip lining work. So contractor has agreed to do the work under the current contract and at the bid unit costs.
So this 42,000 is in addition to the 300,000?
No, it will be plus the 175,000 and the 56,000.
Oh,
so we'll be under the 300,000 budgeted.
Okay. That's because those two came in way under.
Yeah, the bids came in low, so.
Yeah. Any questions on, don't let this one slip by you.
That was a good one.
I've been waiting to say that.
Okay, items 12 and 13 are the request from Rosa Bennett for a children at play sign on 39th Street. As you can see on the memo, 39th Street is classified a local street. The speed limit is currently 25 miles an hour. This allows for a 150-foot stopping sight distance, which we feel is adequate. City policy also does not allow for non-MUTCD approved signs in the right-of-way. We, as far as I know, since I've been here, never approved one of these, and we're not recommending to do that now. So, if there's interest, we could maybe get some enforcement out there or something. But the visibility is good. Past policy's been to deny. So, questions?
Does she want it because it's the curve there, or is there?
I suppose we did look at the curve, and the sight visibility and everything is still good at 25 mile an hour. Now, if somebody's traveling 40, that's different, but we don't sign for those outliers. So.
Well, these signs are typically reserved for just school areas then?
We don't even put them in school areas. They're typically placed by private residences on private streets.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions on this? Okay.
15 and 16 are requests for an extra street light at 29th Avenue and 44th Street. 14, 15. There is a light there already. We have talked to Alliant to see if that light could be enhanced in any way. It cannot. It is a subdivision light that is very typical to every intersection along 29th Avenue. We would not recommend placing another street light at that location. The visibility there is also good. We do have a policy of putting street lights every 600 feet and at intersections, one light at an intersection. The speed limit is 35 miles an hour. We do have a 225 to 250 foot stopping sight distance. We do have that there. There's not a visibility issue. So we are also recommending no action at this time.
So they can't increase the wattage of the light?
No, the type of light it is cannot be. They could change it to an LED, which would give it a different glow, but they would have to go down to a 44 watt from the current 100 watt that's there now.
Oh.
They could not tell me whether the lumens would actually increase or not. So we could go ahead and put a different light there if that's an interest. That would be a cost to the city to replace that.
Guess I've never noticed that intersection being dark.
Be what?
I've never noticed that one being dark, driving up 40.
No, I think it's just people, the request was that people were kind of missing it, I think, and I'm not sure that maybe the speed limit's too high or something and people are driving too fast. I don't know if the last request and this request, both people were notified that we would be discussing this on Thursday, so I don't know if they'll be present or not.
What would the cost be to add another light there?
I'd say probably the $500 to $1,200 maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, I can look into it and just once again, if we do it there, there's lots of locations we could probably do it.
Yeah, that's a big, I mean, it seems like a big intersection.
It's a wide intersection.
Yeah.
It's actually narrower than the ones west of there.
Is it?
So, you look at 35th, 29th, we've got 4 lights there just because of the roundabout. But if you look at 31st, you look at Winchester, and you look at all down through there, they're all basically the same light. So.
Is that a proposed roundabout corner, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be something we would like to do in the future, yeah. Questions on that?
There's venue.
Item 18. Council did receive some comments regarding the Albernet Road Extension project that was done in 2000. I did prepare a fairly extensive report regarding the history of the project and what has occurred since that original last activity having to do with Albernet Road. I'm not going to go through it item by item. I think that the council did get that packet, and if anybody needs it. We did hire Anderson Bogart in 2000, and then put together a committee of 13 in May of 2000. The committee did meet 3 times and look at 4 different alignments, also in 2000. Council did adopt the feasibility study in 2000 in September, and then had public information meetings also in October of that year. They had 2 meetings the same night. Had about 75 people attend. Had a good turnout. At that time, the 75 people filled out questionnaires and recommended item 3 within that meeting. In January of 2001, council held a public hearing, and within that public hearing, they did approve alternate number 3 as their request to move forward with that project. This is number 3 over here. You can see the other ones they looked at. It actually would have stopped at 8th Avenue here. So since that time, we did a project on Albernet Road, central over here on the creek. We did that bridge at that time in 2001. At that time, council made a conscious decision to keep that bridge at 2 lanes and not go to 4 lanes because of what the action had taken place on Albernet Road. So that was the first follow-up for that. In 2011, we also had a public information and council meeting having to do with renaming Albernet Road, because at that time, this portion of Albernet Road was being proposed. Preliminary plat for Bowman Meadows was coming into council. At that time, there was a conscious decision to proceed with that. We, as staff and as council, paid for over width, over depth for the cross-section of that section that comes down through here. So again, a conscious decision to move forward with that project. 2013, we did, within the lost program, the draft spending, we did include, as part of approval by council, funding for this program, for this project. To move forward, we added that $1 million within the 5-year CIP and the local option sales tax to once again support the project and move forward. All this done with the public involved, with staff having conversations with the public, just an ongoing public informational kind of thing going on. Then as the CIP came around, we sat in this room and talked about the CIP, and council added another $1.3 million from other locations, other projects, to once again support the project and move it forward. We have also approved a recent contract with Snyder and Associates for approximately $250,000 to go through this concept statement study that you will receive in the coming months, that will kind of bring it all to a position where we can move forward with construction. That will look at, also I wanted to follow up too, was that when we did the Central Corridor study, we also back in 2011 looked at the traffic study for that corridor, but Anderson Bogart also looked at how that interplayed and interacted with Central Street, Central Avenue, and how that worked with Albernet Road extension and all that. So that study was done back then in 2011, 2012. All looked at again and figured out that it still was necessary to do. So since then, we have worked with Snyder and Associates to come up with this study looking at the creek, the bridge, the alignment, once again looking at impacts to the neighborhood. We also then met with the Parks Board to talk about the impact to Willow Park, brought them up to speed on that. That was a public meeting. It was all on an agenda for that meeting. They were supportive of what was being proposed and how we were handling it. We then met later with the Water Board to look to see how that was going to impact the Water Board, the Water Department properties. That was done. They were also supportive. We are looking at how we get in and out of that site. They have two driveways. They have one on 8th Avenue and one on 2nd Street, which both are difficult now and may become a little more difficult following the reconstruction of this project. But we'll try to make that work for them, and we're working with them closely to get that figured out and to get the best situation possible. So then on May 23rd, we did hold a public open house. About 40 people attended that. We had a good turnout. We had a lot of good questions. We had pretty good coverage from Marion Times. So we felt there was a good public output at that time. And in that meantime, we had talked in this meeting about the demolition of the bridge and moving forward with that. So we have on Thursday, we'll do the asbestos testing on the bridge prior to any demolition being done. We are working with the DOT. They have put kind of I want to say a hold on the project a little bit because of the way the funding's coming forward. So we're trying to move forward with the demolition of the bridge, but because of the way the project is interlinked with the rest of the CMAR trail, we're having difficulty with getting that separated prior to the NEPA, which is the environmental study for the entire corridor. So you may not see anything going on with that bridge probably for as much as a year from now. So, questions?
Questions from council?
How is the alignment right now with the development of that area in the north end there, where it comes down through there? Is that all tied into that development nicely, that going through there?
Yes. In this area here,
Yeah.
The preliminary plat that was submitted and approved by council included that alignment.
Okay.
So they worked with us as far as making that work. We had already committed when the substation was built. Where is that? Right here. They brought power down through and across down through this corridor. We actually at that time set those big poles separating into a height that would accommodate the alignment that was already approved by council. So that tied us into that location so that the subdivision had to meet, that preliminary plat had to meet that location. So we're kind of tied to that. Could change, but it would be expensive because we have those very big poles down through.
So a lot of dominoes have fell since that alignment had been agreed upon. Back in, that alignment has been agreed upon with the final plat of that development has all been set according to that alignment. So.
Yeah, there's been a lot of commitments, a lot of decisions made based on that adoption of that alignment. Now, there's been questions about why we're putting money towards a proposed project. Well, that's all we fund is proposed projects. We go through a process of a project coming about, council looking at it, putting it into a budget, putting it into a CIP, and then finding money to budget in the fiscal year that's coming up, and then moving forward with that project. And that's what we've basically done with this project.
I really appreciate the timeline and all the steps that have taken place over the years since this whole started, because I didn't have all that. I knew there were a lot of discussions, but it was very helpful in reading that and understanding all the milestones that have happened since the whole discussions, with this. So
we're too close to it sometimes, and we forget that we need to bring council up to date on stuff. So anytime you request or need that information, let us know, and we'll try to do a better job.
I just had a question about like Willow Park. How does that affect the park?
Well, Willow Park basically gets split in half. The bathrooms that are there now, the alignment is just southwest of the bathrooms. The bathrooms actually could stay, but Mike has funding to replace that, and they're going to move it farther away from the alignment. We've also created so that along the creek on the northwest side of the park, there'll be a trail running under the bridge so that we can tie the two sides together. We also will have some pedestrian crossings and so forth that will allow for people to go back and forth. There will be trails on both sides of the alignment, so it will kind of tie into the trail system within the park. It will split it, but it will also enhance it in some ways, in my opinion. So.
And then how many homes do you think you're going to have to take
Under
out?
the current alignment, we would acquire the water building, the water house, and then the two north of there. We're currently negotiating with on the west side. The property on the northwest corner of 8th Avenue and 2nd Street, we're currently negotiating with them for a purchase. They're interested in moving forward and getting out of that house. We also talked to the house north of that on the west side. That gentleman there is also interested in selling and would like to come up with a deal with us as well. The water department building sits on city property, but they bought it back in the 80s, I think it was. We need to work a deal with them as well. They have a renter in there that we're trying to relocate.
Have we inquired the land north of Boysen Road, that alignment, that property not?
We currently have right-of-way. There was an old county road there.
Okay.
We're trying to get the alignment to fit within that right-of-way. It's tight, but we think we can. If not, we'll have to acquire a little bit of right-of-way on the west and east sides.
Okay.
We have not, if anybody asks to, and this, up in this area here, there's some preliminary thoughts about how to handle this alignment, whether we close it on the north end or close it on the south end or what we do. That decision's not been made. That's something council will look at in the future. We'll make a recommendation, and that'll come out of the study on what works best for that traffic.
Did you get any feedback on that on the May meeting?
A little bit, very mixed though. I think people, if they're traveling north daily to work or something, they want it open on the north side. With the signals already in place at this end down here, it kind of makes sense to, make this into a loop and come down to the signals.
So you would leave both of them. Was that Lyric Drive or something?
Yeah, all those streets would remain. So the overall plan is kind of to get rid of this segment here and to create a loop here that would come down to the intersection.
So going forward then from, what do we do next?
We're waiting for this concept study to come from the consultant. Within that, we will get the bridge TS&L, which is the type, size, and length. We will get a location. We'll get a recommendation of the impact for properties, whether that's acquisitions, easements, construction easements, permanent easements. We'll get an overall estimate of the project cost. We're kind of looking at that $3.5 million right now. It's actually gone down quite a bit because of some of the alignment being gone already, or being taken care of already. We will then propose after that, if council adopts that, we would propose moving forward with a segment of project, whether that's building the segment between, building the intersection at 7th Avenue, or building the intersection at 8th Avenue, whether it's building the bridge. If we would go in and get the bridge permitted, get that going, that would really help. You could almost bring traffic down, build this section down. You could almost bring them down and dump them onto 2nd Street down there if you really wanted to with the bridge. The big thing about, we're doing all the pre-work in the bridge, so if we keep that project moving forward, all the permitting moves forward, we can get going with that. We've realized that some of the impacts, I guess I'll bring this up, I probably shouldn't, but this bridge on Central is too small. opening. So as we were looking at this bridge, we're having backwater issues, creating some problems in this area for permitting. So we're probably going to end up, which some of you have seen, I think, in the past, the water go over the road here. They're proposing that we put a parallel culvert in next to the bridge, at one end of the bridge, to allow for more water to go through that opening. So that's one of the things we'll have to look at as part of the impact. It's not a created condition with this bridge. It's a condition that exists that just became very apparent as we looked at this bridge crossing down here.
Which way is the water going there? Is it going that way to the east or?
Here?
Yeah.
No, it comes down through here.
Oh, okay.
So this backwater comes back up this way, but it stops back in here somewhere. The bridge has to create a no-flow change, so the level of the creek has to remain the same. We would then move forward with segments of project and go through the funding from council as far as proposing segments. So one of the things we will need to do, and I know there's unhappiness about this segment really needs to be renamed so that we can move forward. So.
Right. I remember that public meeting in 11. That was fun, wasn't it, Chief?
You'd have taken care of it then, so you wouldn't have to do it again.
Ouch. Pull the knife out, Carol.
So are there any other questions on that?
Anything else from council? All right.
One more item. We talked about this last meeting, and council wanted me to come back with, I guess, a resolution to approve the waiver. I did receive, I think he's here. Yep. Matt's here tonight. He did present two options, which are in your packet. Single drive width option. This, for the most part, meets SUDAS specifications except for the request for colored concrete on both sides. Second request, which I think is probably Matt's more preferred option, would be the two driveways at this location, which are very similar to the driveway he has now, or the building he has now. There would be a landscaped area in between, about 20 foot wide. You would have a radius here, which is below SUDAS specifications, but that's really kind of his issue, I guess I'll say, put it that way. Other than that, it meets pretty much the standard, other than the fact it's two driveways. I guess if he's interested in this, council's interested, we would not have an issue with that. So it would just be a matter of council waiving SUDAS specifications on Thursday. So. Is that right? Okay.
Any questions from council? Do you have a comment? Why don't you come up to the mic?
I'll make it quick. Good afternoon. All I really, what I have there's three businesses in this area. And the law or the rules have changed, in the last year or so. So all I'm asking, they all have a variance of sorts. I just like to have that same variance, and I own the rest of the street. So what this does with them two driveways, I'm not putting more traffic on there. I'm actually just kind of diluting it because I'm going to have my equipment next door here. So I just want what everybody's got in my area, and it'll work really good for my access to the backside because I plan to put another building behind that, and then the other area I can kind of squeeze beside that. On the next lot, we'll deal with that. I can have two accesses because it's a corner when I build more buildings over there. But for now, this will work just great if I could do that. Like I said, all three businesses have a variance of sorts, but the rules have changed, and I control the rest of the street and what we're going to put on there. So hopefully, if you have any questions, I can certainly answer them. But
Question on this for Carl Foster. Oh, what's that?
what's that?
Are you good with number 2 then, the one that Dan?
I am. I'm good with 2. 1 before was another option. I got to move a fire hydrant, be a little more expensive, be a little wider, and I think just coming to the conclusion I can deal with 2 and make it work just fine.
Okay.
That works for you guys.
Give your name and address.
Matt Berger, 5875 Linear Avenue, Iowa Wells Concrete.
Yeah,
Thank you
okay.
for your patience in
Oh, you know, it's,
working it out.
sorry that it's taken up so much time.
Was any other comments on this about the waiver? Anyone else wanted to make a comment on this?
Okay.
Okay.
We will be removing item 16 from the agenda on Thursday.
Number 16.
That was a mistake. It's not that we're not doing it. It's just
Okay. Make a mistake, Dan.
I do all the time. I just don't admit them.
Somebody else must have done that.
Blame him on Mike.
Thanks.
Who's this guy?
Tom's Development Show time.
Try and make this quick tonight, right?
Say that every time.
The first item that been identified for discussion is related to improvements to REC Drive. The council has been briefed on the report, and you'll see we received correspondence from Involta by way of both Involta and the Methodist Church regarding a deferment in that area for road construction. Some years ago when Involta was constructed, this being the Involta site, this is the new First United Methodist Church site, the area in red is the portion of road that's being requested to be deferred. It's not often that we do this as a part of development. When you final plat your property, you're required to put your portion of the street in that's included in the final plat. When Involta did this, they asked for the deferral, and it was granted by the city council. It's not common. I think, can't remember the date it was approved, but we haven't done one of these since. So that's how uncommon it is, and it's probably been 10 years. So when the First United Methodist Church came in and said, hey, we're going to plat this, they were required to post surety for their portion of the road, and then they'll ultimately have to put it in. So they approached Involta and said, hey, we need our portion of the money because you're obligated to put your portion of the road in as well. So essentially the road is split. First United pay half, Involta would pay half. They have both come forward now and proposed to defer the improvements at this time. Clearly, from a staff perspective, we like to see this just completed because it kind of leaves some things hanging out there. We'd have basically a road improvement. We wouldn't have any surety for it at this point. If it's just a deferral, we wouldn't get a letter of credit, we wouldn't get a bond, we wouldn't have any cash to make sure that it happens at some point in the future. That point in the future would likely be when the property to the west develops, which we understand probably won't be for some time. Involta has voiced an opinion that they don't want that road put in, primarily because of the way that they do business, and they really don't like to be on a high-profile area, and visible from a public right-of-way isn't really what they'd like to see out there. The road would not be used for quite a few years because there's really nothing west that it leads to. It basically go to the Morris family farm over there. So that's really what they're requesting, is to continue with the deferral. Staff's not really 100% behind that, just because we have to make sure that we can get that portion of road put in the future. There are other options. One, we could get, we could require that they provide the cash for the road, similar to what was done with 35th Avenue on the north side of the First United Methodist Church, so that we would have the dollars and we would accept those, and then when the road to the west is extended and is required, we would have the obligation to place that road at that time. They can make the road improvements, or they can post surety for it. So those are really the three options. I was going to meet with them and explain those options to them, but at this point, really, they're asking for a deferral, and I don't know if the council has any concerns or questions with regard to that.
Does the church need that road open?
No, their drive would be, I think they're right across, aren't they, Dan? They'd be right across.
And when Involta was asked to put in originally, were they paying for the whole road? And now that there's somebody crossing, they're just paying half? Is that?
No, they only have the obligation for half the road.
Okay, originally, always, okay.
If they would have placed it all the way in, then there would have probably been a fee established for them to provide when the church platted.
Questions on this end? I guess the only thing I see is doing the escrow money is that if it's going to be a bunch of years before that happens, you know, that money won't be enough to do it the way costs have been going up.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's no way to inflation proof that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is true. And, you know, just to be clear, you know, when this is a similar situation that we have when any subdivision's placed. You know, they're required to put in the road that's associated with the development. The only unique circumstance here is that the west property won't develop for a long time, and the owners don't really want to have a high profile in the street improvements there. But I mean, the road could sit there for many years and not even be driven on. So,
does fire have any issue with the road not going all the way to the end for access to either building?
Not until there's structures beyond that point.
But for the Methodist Church and Volta, it's fine.
No.
No issue.
Because
okay.
the Methodist Church will also have an access off of 35th.
You probably don't want to set a precedent, Tom, do you, at this point on this?
Well, that's, like I said, it was kind of, they set the precedent when they did it before. We haven't done it since. And so ideally, we would not want to leave something hanging out there like this.
I don't see why we can't defer it, because it's a road to nowhere, and if you put the road in now, who's to say it's not 10, 15 years before anything develops there, and the road might be all cracked up from the weather and need repaired, and it was never used.
The original deferral, I think, was probably, I mean, Involta, I think, was a pretty young company at that time, and it was kind of a part of their economic development package to be able to defer that until a later date. I mean, they are responsible for it now. I think a lot of developers could make that same argument. I mean, we've got streets out there now that have been out there for years that they do pretty well within the weather. I understand that they probably do degrade at some rate, but we have a lot of places that we have dead-end streets that it just makes it easier. We have to go back in years from now and try to follow up on it and make it happen. And Volta might be a different company by then. And
yeah, that's a good point.
They're a pretty successful company. I'm not sure that it's a money issue for them, but I don't know that for sure. But we just don't, once again, it came up, we just don't want to set a precedent here.
One of the concerns that I would raise is similarly to what happened to Involta. So the property was purchased to the north of them. The obligation to put the road in comes with the subdivision and the requirements of the subdivision ordinance. So before we even had an opportunity to address it with Involta, we'd indicated that to the church that, well, you need to speak with Involta regarding the improvements that are necessary, and we'll probably need to process the requirement that the road go in. So it was essentially the church contacted Involta and said, hey, by the way, we need our, and I don't forget, what's the dollar amount, Dan? I mean, it's $100,000. It's $100,000+. So you can imagine, you know, that wasn't probably in their operating budget. That probably, you know, just similar to us trying to react to that situation where all of a sudden, oh, we need $100,000. You know, you can imagine that someday down the road, you're going to have that 80 acres start to develop. Similarly, someone comes in, plats the property, bring the road over, same situation is going to come.
except now you've got a church and a company that are going to have to come up with X amount of dollars at some random period of time, which we all know that can be very difficult to have happen. So that's the problem that we have trying to figure out how to follow up. It's easy to defer it, but 10 years from now, it's really difficult to figure out how we're going to, require that to happen. I mean, sure, the council can say, go ahead and put it in, but that has ramifications to a business and a church, and, then you're into assessments and unpopular items like having to do that work. Then the city has to come up with the money, put the road in, bill it back to the organization. So there's a lot of legwork that comes out of that down the road, is the biggest concern we have as staff.
So when we have a deferral, does that make it into the abstract somehow? I'm thinking of in Volta there. What if they did sell that and the new owner is going to say, well, does that, how do we handle that?
Can you put a lien on the property for the?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd have to be a recorded document.
So we'd have to put a lien on it?
Yeah.
And not to muddy it any farther, but I mean, you could defer for 12 months or something, if it's as Tom brought up, a budget issue or something for either the church or in Volta, I guess. But I would not want to see a waiver, just some kind of a short-term deferral would probably work. We could give them 12 months to do it or something.
What was the option about collecting money for the future? What was?
So we could get an estimated cost for construction, and then similar to what we do when we post surety, we just take the dollars that it would cost to build the road, and we would accept that as a city. And then when the project did come around, we would be responsible to make the improvement as a city.
So they would have to come up with all the money, but
Yep.
the road wouldn't go in? Is that what
Correct.
they would?
Yep, essentially.
Okay.
But as Councilman Joe, or Spinks, has indicated, what happens is if it's 10 years from now, the cost of concrete, so there's an
Right.
inflationary item that is not being accounted for in that situation.
Yeah.
And normally when we do that one, it's a situation where you might have one side of the property being developed and the other side might be just laying there. So you take half of it because it doesn't make sense to put in half the road when nothing's happening on the other side. Here you've got both sides, one that's already developed and the other side that's developing. So that'd be not something you'd commonly do in this situation. If they were both going to write us a check to do the road, we'd just do a project and go do the road. Then all you're doing is introducing a middleman to the equation.
I guess I'm not for deferral. I would be for the road going through.
So the church has already, was planning on that expense already until they approached in Volta?
Correct.
Okay, so it's probably not a monetary thing for the church right now either. They have the funding to be able to...
It seems that way, yes.
Okay.
Probably part of the project.
Mm-hmm. So...
They wanted to get final platted, so they provided surety, which is required to do the final plat, only to move the final plat forward because of this complication. So yes, they were intending to build the street and move forward with it.
I guess I like Dan's suggestion of making a 12-month deferral. That way in Volta will have time to put that into their business plan and not shock them with that. So I guess that's what I would like to see. It's not a waiver, but a deferral.
When's the church project starting? Aren't they supposed to be breaking ground soon, or did they already?
Their property's final platted.
They're either grading or getting ready to grade. They have a grading permit at this time.
So they technically could be putting in the road right away.
By posting surety, they did that to get the final plat approved, which
Sure.
means they're going to want to get that road completed, or they're going to have to start.
So putting it off 12 months, they're going to have the means to do it now, since they're building now, but putting it in 12 months down the road, they're going to have somebody come back out.
And there's probably a fee with that surety as well. So
Yeah, I would imagine.
So who actually does the building of the road? Is it through the city? The city takes, or they actually contract with a contractor and they have a shared expense between the Volta and the church to get that road built?
So yeah, so at this point, the church would be making the improvements.
And then they want to get reimbursed from Volta for their half of it.
Correct.
And this isn't like making the road wider and the city contributes in oversizing the road or anything like that. This is just 100% split between both parties.
Correct. The city would not have any obligation in this.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where it stands. We'll put a resolution on the agenda for, in the positive motion for approval of the deferral, and then I'll let both in Volta and First United Methodist Church know it's on the agenda.
Because it could be cheaper for the road while they're doing some grade work right now with that, and for the church to do it now instead of waiting 12 months if they're intending to get a lot of stuff done before that. And how do we address that if the church saying, if we wait 12 months, it could, and then we had all this other work done, it could be more costly now to bring in a crew to do the road at a later time than it is now. So can we address that in somehow and let the parties and say, we're willing to go to 12 months, but we'd like to have both parties agree that.
Why don't we do this? They're in their letter. They do request a meeting, and I don't know to the extent that Dave's had conversations with them, but maybe we can meet with them between now and the next meeting, and have a conversation regarding this 12-month and maybe what's easier instead of trying to rush it through. I don't know that. I don't get the sense that there's any urgency on behalf of either one of them at this point.
Okay.
Does that make some sense? I think it might go a long way too, and just in a better relationship instead of pushing it through. So we'll do the receive and file. We'll have a meeting and then bring it back for the first meeting in July. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So I'm looking at the map. Is there actually a street, 50th Street, going north-south to the west of REC?
No, 50th Street ends at 29th.
The map shows a road there. It's 50th Street.
There used to be one there.
Like a gravel road?
No. It was in our comprehensive plan many years ago because of REC and the wetlands and so forth, and the dedication of that wetland basin to the city. It was removed by council.
Huh. What are you looking at?
Yeah, because it shows it going up off 29th and ending just north of REC. The aerial view. Anyway.
Any other questions on this? What Tom's going to do?
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
Number 5 and 6 are related, and these are the preliminary and final plat for the Eco-Industrial Park. I think the council's pretty aware of that. Did you have any questions on that? I wouldn't go into great detail unless there's some questions, but this is for the public services facility, both on the west and the east side of 44th Street. If there's no questions, I'll just move on unless there's...
Okay.
Number 7, so there'll be a public hearing on Thursday related to the sale of city-owned property, and it's an alleyway. This is south of 6th Avenue, associated with the Annette Perry project that's been going on. So 6th Ave, 9th Street, 8th Street, so this entire block, as you know, and we'll talk in a little bit about the demolition of a couple houses. These are two houses proposed to be demoed. I'll just talk about them now since we got it up here, but on the agenda is a resolution approval of the demolition of these two homes. As a part of the interim development ordinance, we did go forward and request that anything within the uptown area be approved for demolition. So these are within that area, primarily because we don't want historic structures or something that's adding to the character of the uptown area to be demolished without some sort of review. These two buildings are in pretty tough shape. A lot of foundation work. A lot of foundation cracking and crumbling, and anyway, they're in pretty tough shape. So they're requesting to demolish them as a part of a larger project here. They are retaining the brick home on the corner of 6th and 8th. If you've noticed, there's a lot of work going down in the yards right now, but they are maintaining the brick building, which is something I think everybody's pretty supportive of. So, but as a part of this project, there's going to be some redevelopment where these buildings are. And I would point out that she did try to save them. Desire was to save the buildings and kind of incorporate them into a development plan. It just didn't become financially feasible. So there'll be a public hearing on Thursday related to the sale of the city-owned alleyway, and you can see that the highlighted areas are proposed to be sold. In the packet, there was a identification of the price, how much they're going to be sold for, and the formula for generating that. So there'll be the public hearing and then resolutions approving the sale to each individual that's identified with that project. So,
Is that sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Is that an active alley right now? Or is it grass?
I think the north-south is, but the east-west is not. And then it would be maintained. The north-south would be maintained.
And then 868 Fifth Avenue had no desire to purchase the alley behind their property because Perry's buying both sides.
Yep. Okay. That's how we do that. Yep. First right of refusal.
Right.
Yep.
What about the section? Sorry, the next section over to the east.
This
Yes.
right here.
Yes.
It's already sold.
Yeah, that was sold at a previous sale. That's actually owned by the adjacent property owner already.
Okay.
The little house right there.
The little one.
Yeah.
Yep.
They own it. Okay.
This is disposal of the remaining.
Oh, okay.
Well, I thought we sold the one section, the north-south section, to Perry before.
We did.
Okay.
And I guess I didn't remember what the Fifth Avenue section. Maybe that was in the past.
Some of these deeds went back to the 1850s.
Old stuff.
So
All helped write them.
Vacation.
The alley vacation went back to practically the 1800s. Not that bad, but it was bad.
Yeah.
The alley. So when I'm citing the alley vacation, the clerk certificate records as.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Any other questions?
Tom, could you show me where the development's going exactly?
So 6th Ave, so it's going to be on the north side.
Okay.
Yep. And then
So are they going to bring back a different, plan?
they are.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep. So they'll be taking a revised site plan through Planning Commission and City Council. So that'll be coming in the future. I think she said August. She wanted to bring some stuff back through. So there'll be more to come.
Good.
Okay, number 12.
Item number 12, pretty straightforward project. It's a final site development plan for Lynn County REC building and expansion. They're just making a couple additions to their existing facility because of the zoning. They have to bring that through. You can see they're adding some additional office space onto the building. And this one did go to the Planning Commission, has been recommended approval.
What's the other red box? Is that expansion of the parking lot?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. 13.
Number 13, Water Rock LLC. That one's going to come off the agenda. Spoke with them today, and we want to get some things straightened away on the surety requirements as part of the final plat, and they don't really need to do that until for a few more, probably not until the second meeting in July. So.
I wouldn't have wanted to be 13 either, so.
14 through 18 we'll discuss in the executive session. Number 19, just so the council's aware, there's been a request filed for building permits prior to final plat. We do this on occasion, and generally, unless it gets up around 6 or 7, we really don't bring it up, but I just thought I'd let the council know that that's being proposed, and we'll work with the developer on that. They're aware of the liability by going out ahead of the plat. But item number 20 is just related to the Perry property that I'd indicated, the demolition of the 2 buildings. Unless you have further questions, I won't go into any more on that.
How soon, excuse me, how soon are they wanting to take them down? Right away, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The Obando request to defer public improvements and annexation. This is out off 35th. We talked a little bit about this at the last meeting. I'm going to see if the owners plan to attend the meeting, and they wrote a letter regarding this proposal. I really struggle with how we would be able to work into any kind of a deferral for this property. There's 2 homes on 1 parcel. The only way the city ever gets a payback for road construction is through platting. That's where all the conversation we had about the deferral of the improvements, when the improvements go in, and posting surety and bonding and all that stuff, that occurs when the property's platted. Their request for the deferral and allow a split to occur, we basically are waiving our right to ever get any kind of improvements done out there or the cost associated with improvements ever repaid. So that's why we as staff continue to not recommend approval of the deferral. Additionally, the only way we get annexation sometimes is through the subdivision rules. If they're in the county currently, they can't split the property for 2 reasons. One, they need to rezone it, I believe, because in the county you can only split 35 acre or a 40-acre tract, or the minimum lot size in this area would be 35 acres. So they wouldn't be allowed to split it into the 2 parcels and leave the remaining piece open. They have to come to the city also for a subdivision within 2 miles of the corporate limit lines, and of course we'd be looking at the same standards that we are now, and that is either making the improvements or posting surety for them. So it really is a tough situation for them, and we understand the situation, but I don't know that there's any way we could release them from that liability. It would be very difficult. I know from our perspective we can't recommend it, that we would not get any return on at least the first 1,200 feet of roadway, which of course would be a lot of money.
So they didn't split that parcel, then we're not talking about this.
Correct.
Or if they didn't want to split
They can, their property can remain as it is for forever. But their problem is they got 2 homes on 1 lot, and pretty, if it's, you can't sell one without splitting the property. That's the situation.
But they weren't selling, wasn't it in the thing, the family?
Yeah. But essentially.
But they were gonna.
Down the road, yeah. I'm sure there's some financing mechanisms. There's probably all different kinds of things that are associated with that, but, you know, I from a position of the city, I don't know how we would make that waiver possible. The only thing that I could think that would occur is if there was a way to do something similar to what we've done on Tower Terrace Road with providing it as when the property develops, but even that I think would be pretty convoluted. We did that on Tower Terrace Road, but it was for a vacant parcel of ground that was going to be soon developed. Anyway, that's from a staff perspective. There's just, I don't see how there's a way we can recommend approval of that. And if it was recommended to occur that way by the council, we'd basically be forfeiting the ability to capture the cost for the road public. When I say road, I mean all public improvements associated with the frontage on that quarter section.
Tom, just to be clear, this is just north of the United Methodist Church, which we just collected money from, unless I missed you saying that.
No.
We just collected money on the south half of this so that they could final plat, and now this is the north half of that exact same street.
Yeah.
And they really would like to have that road all paved.
Correct. Yeah.
No, Deb would like that road all paved.
Yeah, so. So, I mean, I guess I'll relay the information to them again and just say, you know, I don't see how that can happen. We'll have this one on the agenda, and if they want to speak about that, they would be here on Thursday.
Is it getting paved no matter what because of the church?
No, it's not getting paved at this point. They just provided the cash.
The church did?
Yes.
So it's not, okay.
They'd love to have it paved, I think.
Yeah, they really wanted it paved, but if you remember during the 5-year CIP discussion, council decided not to pay for the other half.
Right. All along there? Yes. Yeah. Or all the way to the west of, yeah. Wasn't that?
There are significant portions of 35th Avenue west of here, east of 35th Street, that are being completed this year and next year. So there's a march towards this end of the project to get this paved all the way from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Fire chief's shaking her head yes over there.
We deferred that money over to, or not deferred, but moved that towards Albernet Road, didn't we? Wasn't that what that was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was reallocated. I'm
Right,
not sure
that's what I
exactly
meant.
where.
Reallocated, not deferred.
So item number 22 is related to the memorandum of agreements for installation of sidewalks, and we presented the memorandums to the groups involved in the Lucor sidewalk project. The reason we put them all on here is we're still awaiting signatures from some of them, and the ones that we don't receive signatures by Thursday on will go under item 20, or will become an item for resolution necessity requiring the payment to be made for the sidewalk. So at this point, we've got 22A and 22C, which are Fairways at Hunters Ridge Condo Association and Broadstone at Hunters Ridge Condo Association. Those both have signed on for paying the proposed or entering into the agreement to pay for the sidewalks. What we would do at this point, we would take off number 23 and 25 because they're paying, and we would do resolution and necessities for Vintage Condo Association, Hunters Ridge Development, and Camden Farms Condo Association. So if things change between now and the council meeting, you'll see some changing of those agreements. And then if they come in the day of, we'll probably have to figure out something on either Thursday or the next meeting regarding those.
Because I've been asked, because it's across the street from me, how far back from the street is the sidewalk at Camden Farms? Does that take their fence out of there and all of that signage and all their trees?
No, I'm pretty sure the fence is either on or close to the right-of-way. We're back part way. I can't tell you exactly without the plans in front of me. We allow for snow storage between the curb and the walk, so it's probably back 6 feet or so. But the fence and everything associated with the fence will stay.
The sign, do you know, Dan?
I think the fence is up, the sign is up against the fence, isn't it?
It's close, yeah.
Yeah, I
Hopefully-
can't, I'm pretty
hopefully
sure
they'll be
it
able-
does, but I can't confirm that, but I can let you know if that's
I just,
necessary.
you know, that's part of their wonderance, is,
Yeah, my only concern is that if the sign is outside the fence, it's probably in city right away, so.
possible.
Might be illegal already.
Yeah. I can check, Paul, and get back to you.
Yeah, they've been calling.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, you see this being on the consent calendar, or will it be in the regular?
Where would you like it?
Ones that have signed might as well be in the consent calendar.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Right, if they
Resolution of
sign.
necessity. If we're requiring them to do something, we'll put it on regular, and if it's, if they've
That's where-
agreed, yeah, okay.
That's where I was headed.
Yep, we'll do that,
Okay.
absolutely.
If they don't, if there's a resolution of necessity, they're paying more for the sidewalk, correct? Or is it?
I don't believe so. No, we're just,
Is
we're
it-
doing the dollar
No,
amount.
it's the same cost one way or the other.
Either way?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I read it wrong.
There may be carrying costs associated with it. They would be charged
Well, it
interest
sounded
on
like
that,
the
right?
City was gonna pay for a portion unless it was the, other way, but maybe I read it wrong.
I don't think so, unless, like Tom says, if there's handling administrative costs or something, or we would charge the unit cost per the contract.
Okay.
When are we hoping to get this project rolling?
Mid-July, late July.
Okay.
We won't get it all done this year.
Right,
We're
so-
proposing,
When will letting be?
July 11th, I think,
Okay.
is the letting.
All right.
Can I read you what it says?
Yeah, we have 2 lettings on July 11th. It's 31st Street and Loop Corps.
Okay. So Dave wrote this. Says, the resolution of necessity requires the installation of sidewalks at the full cost to the property owner and not part of the city project. So that made me think that it was less expensive to sign the piece of paper.
Can be that way if you want it that way, but.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying to
we-
do that.
the-
That's just what I got out of reading that.
We've made an estimate of cost based on what we think the bid will be, and that's applied throughout all the
Okay,
agreements. So.
So it's comparable
No.
for all the parties? The
Yes.
bid's comparable?
Because we're not charging for any of the appurtenances as far as walls and all that stuff, it's pretty easy to come up with that estimated cost.
Right, right.
And I think there's a spreadsheet within the packet or something you might have received from Dave that had those costs in it.
Okay. Any other questions then on those? I believe that's it for you. Administration.
I had a question for you, but I can't think of it now.
Number 1 is a public hearing on an amendment to the Central Corridor Urban Renewal Area Plan. This allows for 2 projects to be written in. The first one, which you have seen, will be Mojo Properties, the existing Shermco site. So on Thursday's meeting, we'll also be setting a date for a public hearing on that development agreement. The second would be the private side of the proposed library project, and that has not moved anywhere. So if that were to come back, it would come before council, just as Mojo did, at a future date. Do you have any questions? And then number 6 is also starred, but that'll be coming off. We have to have additional staff discussion on that, but we will be bringing it back to council on July 6th.
One comment on that is that they're charging us $103 for a 128 gig micro SD card. That's a little
They're like $5
Times-
at Walmart.
Yeah, that's times 5. There's 5 of them for each camera. And that'd be a little hard to swallow.
Okay, well, we'll review those unit prices a
Yeah.
little bit more closely.
Yeah, it ought to be about $10 maybe. Unless that's a super whiz-bang card that I don't know about.
Are we getting multiple quotes for this?
Oh, yes, there's
Okay.
been several quotes, and this is
Okay.
something that our IT manager has been working extensively on for
Okay.
several months.
All right.
Okay. Last one.
That's it, other than item I.
Yep, that's where we're at. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Carl Foster's been sitting out there awake all evening, and he was going to appear here a week or so ago, and I know as a fact he was fishing, but if we could we allow him a few minutes here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, come up and.
He was actually going to.
Short and as painless as possible. Thank you very much for letting me here.
Yeah, so just your name and address. I mean, we all know
My name's
you.
Carl Foster, and I'm representing ABC Connection, or the owners of ABC Connection, Sarah Mossman and Catherine Lovell. And Catherine Lovell happens to be my daughter, so that's kind of how I got hooked into this, if you understand what I mean. But I did make a copy of a handout, and I'll leave it with you. We've been working on this relocation funding ever since we started the purchase of the building. And that was back in the beginning of 2015. At that time, Ron told me that all we're worried about with the building is the real estate, that we would do a relocation funding later. So this is where we kind of, and I want to kind of give you a background of how we got where we're at, and I'll let you understand why the young ladies are taking the position they're taking. How we got here, a brief history of the library project of Marion, its effect on ABC preschool and daycare. ABC Connection Daycare and Preschool was created by Sarah Mossman, Kathy Lovell. March of 2001, they opened in an in-home daycare facility. They experienced immediate success, and they decided to work up a business plan to have a facility built especially for daycare located at 1195 6th Avenue, Marion. This new facility would include surveillance, security, playground equipment, and all their needs are required by the DHS. The facility was designed and built in September of 2002 to handle 65 patrons. Their business plan showed a break-even of 50 patrons as regulated by the DHS. Sometime in the year 2013, the Marion Library Board, established a renovation expansion committee based on their investigation. In May of 2014, they posted a facility needs assessment to the library website and tried to use other means, including press releases and the Marion Messenger, to let Marion people know of their activities. In September 2014, the board announced a pre-selection committee to hopefully attract 10 firms capable of handling their project, with the intention of choosing one of those firms to move forward with the project. This committee subsequently chose Ryan Construction as the firm and worked with the library board to design and build a multiple-use facility. In November of 2014, the board of directors approached the owners of ABC Connection with their plans to build a multiple-use facility which would incorporate a new library facility. The project would include a portion of the building to house the ABC Connection, or their business activities. At this point, the plans were to buy an ABC building, tear it down, and move ABC into a new facility. Up to this point, the owners of ABC Connection were able to maintain their 60 to 65 patrons as needed and were profitable. In March of 2015, ABC was asked to provide an offer to sell the property to Ryan Construction. In March 15, 2015, we presented an offer to the selling of Ryan Construction. It was subsequently decided that the city of Marion would negotiate the purchase of the ABC property, and the owners were asked to furnish an offer to sell their building to the city of Marion. And it was this time that I had discussion with Lon, and he said that all they're concerned with was the real estate, nothing to do with the business or the miscellaneous equipment. So in April 2015, owners submitted such an offer. It was about this time the ABC Connection started to experience a drop-off of number of patrons. By the middle of 2015, the patron count was down to 50 children and went below the break-even point to be profitable. Over the next 5 months, there were numerous unsuccessful attempts to mark part of the ABC to negotiate a sale of the building. In June of 2015, they lost 3 of their best care providers. Their patron count continued to fall off, and at the end of October, the count dropped off to 31 children, and they were going further in the hole every week. They couldn't pay their bills. It was then that they were forced to close their doors. They subsequently listed their property with the Iowa Realty to sell. Their bank started foreclosure proceedings, which forced them to try and find a buyer for the property. They had 3 very interested buyers. One of the buyers went to their bank to arrange finance and were told the bank would not work with them on this property because it was common knowledge that the city of Marion was going to buy it and tear it down. Consequently, the owners found themselves in a situation. They owned a building that they couldn't do business out of and they could not sell because it was common knowledge that the city of Marion was going to buy it and tear it down. What made things worse, their bank was moving forward with foreclosure. Meanwhile, there was a concerted effort on the owner's part to get the city of Marion to buy the property to no avail. On September 27th of 2016, the owners finally negotiated a sale of the building at the appraised value. It is a mystery to everyone the city of Marion could take from March 24th, 2015 to September 27th of 2016 to finally purchase the property. The end result is the delay destroyed not only the business of the ABC Connection, but destroyed as well the dreams and owners to own the daycare. It also destroyed the business and personal credit and finances. Through the whole process, city assured the owners that they would receive relocation funds. The problem with providing relocation funds at this point, it will necessitate funding startup costs, bringing to the total cost of relocation estimated at $272,000. This amount does not allow the owners to recover any of the outstanding debts created by the closing of the old business, which are approximately $49,000. To make matters worse, the owner's credit was destroyed and they have no money in their own to invest. It appears that the only way they would open up a new preschool daycare facility is to start over with an in-home daycare business and slowly build it up again. And they're willing to do this. They are absolutely disenchanted with a full-blown daycare business because they just don't. They love the daycare and the preschool function. They don't like the business part of it. They don't like hiring people. And quite frankly, they just got burned, so they don't want to do it again. They would open up in their home as a home daycare and build it up again, but this is going to take time. It is for this reason that Sarah Mossman and Kathy Lovell are asking the city of Marion to participate in the amount of $110,000. This would give them enough money to start a new home daycare business that would include startup costs and miscellaneous equipment and supplies. And it would also possibly contribute to the satisfaction of outstanding debts at the close of business. And this was respectfully submitted by Kathy and Sarah. Lon and I worked with Scott Olson on a relocation down here in the Maggot facility, and we did a business plan. And in that business plan, it showed that they were going to need, and I gave it to you, gave you a sheet on it. We got the moving report. They were going to need in the neighborhood of $69,000 as just starting up again, as startup capital. Plus, what did they say? The remodel cost was going to be $145,000, and miscellaneous equipment, so, was gonna be in the neighborhood of 40,000. So we were looking at, well, from 200 to 272,000 to relocate this thing. And these gals don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to run a daycare business. They want to do preschool daycare out of their home. They were happy, they were profitable, and they didn't have near the headaches. And that's why they're asking you for $110,000, and that would take care of all city financial responsibility in it.
Any questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering why they left all their equipment and all their, daycare.
Well, they took what they could out of it. Most of it, what are they going to do with it? They had people look at it to buy it. It was used. She's still got a bunch of cribs in that garage over there that they couldn't sell.
But if they were going to, have an in-home, you would think they might have taken some of that with them. I don't know.
Well, they would have had they had the capital started the in-home, because they're going to have to. They would have moved some of the equipment, but they had to buy a lot of equipment.
Yeah. To me, it appears they maybe jumped the gun of dissolving their business, because I know people that were using the daycare, and they wanted to keep going to that daycare.
Well, they did.
And maybe, it's just like anybody in the mini mall. If they would just, I think the library's going to buy us, so let's just leave.
Well, the problem
That's what
they
it
ran
kind of sounds like to
into,
me.
Kim, is in the fall. That's their big sign-up time.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost count in the fall because of the notoriety of the city was going to buy it and tear it down. They didn't get any startup people to come in, and they lost their teachers. I mean, that was really a big deal, and they couldn't stay alive the way they were because they weren't paying the bills. It was just. So that's kind of, they would not have closed that down had they found any other way to do it.
Carl said he and I have had a lot of discussions on this, but I wanted to invite him to come and have an opportunity to present to the city council, just to kind of let you know where he was coming from on that. It's not really listed as a discussion item here, but we'll have further discussion with council so that we can let him know where you guys want to head with it.
I just wonder if we wanted to receive and file this today, or?
We can receive and file it on Thursday.
Okay.
I did.
Could I get a copy too, Carl? Thank you.
Same one you gave me, Carl.
Yeah.
I thank you very much. You got to be wearing down.
So if you'll put that on the agenda then for Thursday, to receive and file this. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Pardon me?
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think it's a reasonable solution to a bad problem, because, the city we were going to get relocation funding, I think, we were told we were. And this is a lot cheaper alternative for the city, and to have an issue closed and done out of it, so. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, now we're put to the point for a motion to adjourn to closed session. Review.
Yes, I've reviewed the proposed subject matter for the closed session.
Did you second it?
Oh.
I thought you said.
Yes.
I thought I heard you second it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Microphone. Yes, I reviewed the subject matter that is proposed for the closed session and find it appropriate under Iowa code.
Okay, roll call, Beth.
Mr. Draper?
Yes.
Ms. Etzel? Mr. Spinks?
Yes.
Mr. Brandt?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson?
Yes.
Thank you.